So my experiment is just double dipping spread germs, and I will show this by scooping 3 scoops of Sabra original hummus into 3 separate glass bowls. And I will double dip in one bowl, single dip in another bowl, and just leave one bowl like to be. And then I will scoop those 3 scoops of hummus into 3 separate petri dishes to be left to mold for 8 days. So the hypothesis for my experiment is that no matter how many times the chip is dipped into the hummus, the end result, or after the 8 days, each petri dish will have the same amount of mold covering the hummus. To start my experiment, I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of Sabra original hummus into 3 separate glass bowls. Next, I'm going to dip 1 pretzel thin into the first bowl once. In the second bowl, I will double dip. In the third bowl, I'm going to leave the hummus as it is. I am now going to separate each bowl of hummus into a petri dish. In the first petri dish, I will put in the single dipped hummus. In the second petri dish, I will put in the double dipped in hummus. And lastly, in the third bowl, I will put in the hummus that was not dipped in at all.
Wow.
The next thing I will do is label each petri dish. The first petri dish will be labeled no dipping because I did not dip in that hummus. The second petri dish will be labeled single dipping because I only dipped in that hummus once. And lastly, the third petri dish will be labeled double dipping because I double dipped in that hummus. The first day I recorded the amount of bacteria growth in each petri dish, I noticed that there was no mold growth yet. The second day I measured the growth of bacteria in each petri dish. I also noticed that there was no mold growth. Just like the first 2 days of measuring the growth of mold, I noticed that there was no mold growth in each petri dish. The fourth day of measuring the growth of bacteria in each petri dish, I noticed that the double dipping petri dish had started to sprout mold. On the fifth day of measuring the amount of mold growth, I noticed that the single dipping petri dish along with the no dipping petri dish had started to sprout mold. On the sixth day, each of the petri dishes had started to sprout even more mold. On the seventh day, each of the petri dishes had the same amount of bacteria growth on them. Lastly, on the eighth day, each of the petri dishes had the same amount of mold growth on them. This table shows the percent of mold growth in each petri dish. The result of my experiment supported my hypothesis because after the full 8 days, each petri dish had the same amount of mold or bacteria covering it.